First and foremost, hello and welcome everyone for joining us at this special Liberal Coffee Hour hosted by the ALDE Party and the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, where we will be discussing the outcome of the recent US election. I am pleased to introduce our speakers for this afternoon. Moderating the event today, we have Daniel Berg, who is the ALDE Party Vice-President and Director of International Affairs at Momentum Hungary. Also joining the panel today is András Simonyi, who is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and former Hungarian ambassador to the US and NATO. During today's event, we will be having a graphic recording done by Orla O'Brien, who will be illustrating the discussion in real time. Also, please remember that there will be a Q&A portion of this event towards the end of the hour, so please feel free to ask your questions either via the Q&A function here on Zoom or via the comment section on Facebook Live. Now, before we jump into the discussion, it is my pleasure to pass it over to Thomas Ilka, who is the Regional Director of European Dialogue for the Friedrich Naumann Foundation. Thomas, over to you.
Thank you, Natalie, and welcome to you all on the screens and to our speakers. My name is Thomas Ilka. I'm the Regional Director of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation in Brussels, of the European Dialogue, with offices in Brussels, Prague, and Madrid. We are doing the program, the whole European program for the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, which is a foundation active in more than 60 countries all over the world, with a strong office in Washington, DC, and we advocate freedom, multilateralism, open societies, social markets, rule of law, just to name a few of our special endeavors. So, and what could be more at our heart than the US election and the outlook with regard to the transatlantic relations, which is combined with that question to my feeling. And when I look to that one, which I can very much imagine will be part of the discussion, then we can switch back 2 days where there was leaked this non-paper on renewing EU-US relations. And there we had it all. I mean, it's about fighting together the COVID-19 pandemic, enhancing the economic recovery, combating climate change, upholding multilateralism and shared values, and promoting peace and security, of course, in various frameworks. So I am very excited to hear on these matters and on what has changed with a new administration under Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris from now on, from January 20th on, both with regard to transatlantic relations. And I'm sure that our two valuable guests will touch the US inside issues as well. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for the ALDE Party for partnering again on this event. And without further ado, I hand over to Daniel Berg, looking very much forward to the discussion. Thanks a lot and have fun.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Warm welcome to everyone from me as well. And I would like to start by thanking the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for helping organize this event, co-organizing. And warm welcome as well to Ambassador András Simonyi. Mr. Ambassador, are you here with us?
Yes, I'm here. Hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes, and we can see you. Great.
Okay, good, good. Excellent, excellent.
So it's been an exciting year in U.S. politics, and I think let's get straight away to the questions. As you know, as a seasoned diplomat, you've probably seen as well that the US-EU relation has been under considerable strain under the Trump administration. So my first question to you is, how can the incoming Biden administration repair these links, this friendship with the European Union, and what can European officials do on their end?
Well, first of all, this is a very cool event. Donnie, good to see you. I just want to be very clear about the fact that I'm definitely not speaking as a Hungarian, because I live in the United States today. I'm more involved in American politics than I am in Hungarian politics these days. And I do it. I've always attached a great deal of importance to the transatlantic relationship. You know, the last couple of years have been hard, but I'm glad that there are you know, there's a lot to build on still, and I have to say that that the relationship, all in all, stood the stress test. It did not fall apart. There are things that happened under the Trump administration that people don't want to hear about, but which were, I think, the right things, and where there will be continuity. It's obvious to me that the challenges posed by China is going to be an absolute priority for the Biden administration. And let's face it, like it or not, we didn't like the way Trump presented it. We did definitely not like the way Trump spoke about the allies, but it was the right thing to do, to put the foot in the door for the Chinese that have been intruding into countries, including some members of the European Union, to the extent that, as far as I'm concerned, is threatening our integrity and our cohesion. So this is one thing. There are the other things as well. Let's face it. In spite of the fact that that Trump had questionable, let's say it in a very nice diplomatic way, questionable contacts to Vladimir Putin, all in all, America did keep the sanctions. America did push back on Nord Stream 2. America did, all in all, did the right thing in terms of Russian efforts to disrupt our societies. So that's something that will be more visible. But that has to that has to continue. Let's face it, there are a number of things that have to change. First, multilateralism was mentioned, and I will say that I'd like to sum up the future of American foreign policy with the words of Tony Blinken, who at his quote unquote acceptance speech to be nominated for Secretary of State said, humility and confidence. Humility and confidence, which means that, yes, be humble, show humility, work with the allies, work with the international community, but show confidence where you need to show confidence. Confidence maybe is another word for leadership. I personally am a strong believer in American leadership. I think the world needs American leadership, and I know some Europeans hate to say this because they consider themselves, now we're equal partners. Well, let's face it, there are things where we are equal, but there are things where Europe is totally dependent in the United States, and the number one thing is security. So don't kid yourself. American leadership is really important, but American leadership needs to be right. It has to be cooperative. It has to be understanding. It has to be humble, and has to be very strong and powerful when it needs to be strong and powerful. I'd also mention that I do believe that there are aspects of Trump's policy that Europeans did not like to hear, but at the end of the day, they did understand. Europe needs to spend more on its security, period. And that demand will continue. It was not invented by Trump. Trump delivered the message in a very brutal and maybe sometimes unacceptable manner. But let's face it, it's true. And I think the Biden administration will say it nicer. It will be more pleasant. The conversation will be more pleasant, but the message will be the same. Europe needs to spend more on its own security because, one, America is going to regroup its resources, security and defense resources, because there are threats and challenges elsewhere. Two, it's because there is also a pressure from American society to ask our allies to spend more. Finally, I want to mention one thing that has been totally lacking from the Trump administration. This is America's leadership on democracy, freedom, and the protection of our basic freedoms that are enshrined in the American Constitution, especially the First Amendment. I would, for Europeans who are not familiar with the American Constitution, the First Amendment is really about the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of redress, redress government, which is absolutely at the core of what our democratic and free societies have to be about. Without American participation in the quest for freedom, our societies, our democratic and free societies, and I guess this is at the heart of all the liberal parties. I think this is at the core of what you all represent. Without that, our countries, our nations, our societies will be hollowed out. So therefore, I think it is really important that the Biden administration has signaled that it will pay much more attention to the democratic credentials of countries. And yeah, and of course, point in case or case in point, I'm sorry, is Hungary. I think Hungary can expect a lot clearer message from the United States, and this is good. And I think in this, Europe and America needs to hold hands. To be a little bit critical of the European Union, Europe has not been able to deal with its democracy issues within its own ranks. So it means to me that we have to deal with it together. This will be a core function, an important element of the Biden administration's foreign policy. And then finally, so that I will not be accused of being a radical and conservative climate person, I want to make sure that climate, and I want to leave this to the end because I know it is so important to Europeans. As far as I'm concerned, climate is part of what we have to deal with. It is not the only thing we have to deal with. It's part of many issues we have to deal with. But in terms of ranking, it really is, considering the importance and the urgency of the climate issues, it has to be on the top of our agenda, on which the Biden administration has sent a clear message. And if you want a friendly nod to Europeans by appointing one of the most important and most trusted allies of the incoming president, John Kerry, former Secretary of State, former Senator forever, to be the secretary dealing with climate issues. That's a big deal. That's a big message to the Europeans. We get it. But I just want to say that I've heard voices from Europe said, you know what? Why don't everybody has seen my beautiful face. Why don't I turn off the video so that you hear me? So I just want to say that I've heard voices from Europe criticizing the Americans. Oh, you can't pretend to lead now. You've been absent for 4 years and now you come back and you pretend that you will be leading. Well, guess what? If this is the kind of competition some Europeans are talking about, then we're going to end up in disaster. If they accept that the family of democracies, NATO in particular, has one leader, and that's the United States, and it's okay. It's not a disaster. On other issues, the United States will just want partnership. So when I talk about U.S. leadership, the comeback of U.S. leadership, when Biden talks about we're back and the United States is back in action, this is the way he means it. He means there are issues. No doubt, on some issues, the United States is going to be the leader of the pack in the West. On other issues, it will be an incredibly robust partnership we are looking for. And on some issues, maybe on some issues, Europe will be ahead. On other issues, the United States will be ahead. It should not be seen as a competition. So therefore, I do believe that we are the Western world. Our liberal way of life is getting a lease on life. I really think that this is a huge opportunity, and it will depend on both the United States and Europe to figure out how we reconstruct the transatlantic relationship, how we will make sure that we push back on illiberal efforts to destroy our societies. So I'll stop here and let's have a conversation.
Great. Well, thank you for what is a very thorough opening answer. You touched on a lot of issues that we're going to touch on in the commencing questions. We're going to talk about climate change. We're going to talk about what Mr. Blinken's appointment means for U.S. foreign policy. And I would like to highlight as well that we as European liberals are very happy and very excited to see a potential return to the value-based, the international law-based, the, let's say, democracy, rule of law-based international order. So let's talk a little bit about the European side of the coin, if we may. As you probably know, this week, the European Commission adopted its new US-EU agenda for global change. And this is what sets out basically the steps to restore the transatlantic relationship. It marks some quite ambitious goals for global solutions on many issue areas. How feasible do you think that this is for the European leadership? And do you think there will be some pushback from the incoming administration on such priorities as, well, actually carbon neutrality by 2050? Or even other areas that may be of potential conflict?
Well, first of all, we still have to digest what the European message is about. But I think it's a welcome effort from the Europeans. You know, I don't want to be cynical. If the effort is, okay, we need to frame the conversation before the Americans do, that's wrong. But if this means that, yes, let's enter into a conversation early and figure out, okay, how can we reconstruct our cooperation? You know, that's very cool. In my day job at the Atlantic Council, I deal a lot with energy, and I must say that we have been pushing for a balanced approach between climate concerns and the increasing demand. You know, I really, you know, it's good to set ambitious goals, but these goals also have to be realistic. I do believe that a lot is happening in the United States as well. There are a lot of technologies being developed. I have to say that the gas industry, the often chastised gas industry, LNG industry, which is so important in particular for European energy security, has done a lot. There are companies that are targeting zero emission by 2024, a total capture of methane in 5 years. So they have responded. Look, they have responded well to the demands of society. So I don't think this is a source of conflict. But I do believe that as the Biden administration in earnest starts to work on these issues, it will set its own. I'm absolutely certain ambitious goals, and I don't think this should be a source of conflict. Let's not throw numbers around. My worry is that we have started throwing numbers and years around, and you know, there was so much applause when the Chinese started throwing around numbers and years, by which time the Chinese will be totally carbon neutral, which frankly was a cheap throwaway. It was even a little bit cheeky to say, "Oh, we'll give you a bigger number." It cannot be about numbers. Let's just start working on how we achieve this together, and I don't think it will be a source of conflict at all.
Great, thank you very much, sir. And then, well, let's talk a little bit about the cabinet, the incoming cabinet. We know a few names, potential nominees. You mentioned Mr. Blinken, who I believe you know personally, and plays in your band from time to time on the guitar. So how do you rate the cabinet choices that we've heard so far? And how do you think Mr. Blinken's appointment will influence foreign policy, as well as if you want to comment on some of the other names we've heard, how will they affect their policy areas?
Well, I've known Mr. Blinken for a very, very long time. I've known him way back when I was Hungarian ambassador to the United States, and he was staff director at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So I've seen him work. I just want to also tell you that interestingly enough, his father was a diplomat, was an ambassador to Hungary, and I worked with him when I was back at NATO on the Hungarian NATO membership. And I must admit, without Mr. Blinken, without the push of this by Mr. Blinken, Hungary might not have become a member of NATO in the first batch. So that's really the history. But Mr. Blinken, Tony Blinken, has shown that he's astute. He's well studied. He understands Europe very well. He speaks fluent French. He spent some of his formative years in France, so he has a deep understanding of Europe, and looks at Europe as allies and partners. And I think that is going to be very, very important when he in his work. There are some issues where Mr. Blinken hasn't been mainstream. He has been on some issues. He has been, and I agreed with him totally. He has been somewhat hawkish, but I think that was the right thing, because I too agree that while Tony Blinken is a great supporter of American soft power and foreign policy, he is a supporter of diplomacy first, but he also understands that comes a moment when force, power, military force has to be put behind your words. And there were moments in the Obama administration where I know he disagreed with President Obama, namely the red line, the famous red line decision in Syria, where Mr. Blinken would have taken a tougher approach, and I totally agree with that. It does not mean that he's a warrior. He does not think that America has to continually participate in wars. It only means that he understands the importance of the balance between soft and hard power. So that's really how I see Mr. Blinken. I also would say that he's very close to the president, and I think that's critically important. That is really, really critically important for American foreign policy. Let me add that you will see a president that has worked on international relations forever. He has been the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, a really important part, or a member of the U.S. government. I would also want to say that, let's move on from foreign policy. I like the nomination of Miss Yellen to the Secretary of Treasury. May I say that these are the two most important positions in any government? So I'm very pleased with that, and I'm very pleased to see the diversity in government. There is some debate about maybe you need to add more African Americans. You need to maybe include some people that are members of the LGBT community. That will come. I don't worry about that. But the fact that it's the first woman has been appointed, named as future Secretary of the Treasury, I think that's a pretty big deal. So I feel good about the appointments. Let's see how they can get them actually confirmed by the Senate. Our European friends need to know that's going to be a very tough process, but I feel good about it. I really feel good about it. And by the way, for all of you, there's a new song. There's a new song on Spotify with Tony Blinken, and it's damn good. It's damn good. So you'd better listen to it, because you will understand that he's no joke. He's no joke in foreign policy, and he's no joke in rock and roll.
Great. I'm definitely going to check that out after we finish our talk. But let's turn a little bit. We talked a lot about the incoming administration. Let's talk a little bit about the outgoing administration. So a lot of Americans did vote for Donald Trump this time around too. And Trumpism, around the world, we see copycats, we see, illiberal leaders, populist leaders. So some would say that Trumpism as a political concept is here to stay. How do you see the legacy of Donald Trump? How do you see the ongoing effects of Trumpism? Do you think the aftermath of the Trump administration can hinder progress for Biden or for world leaders? And what can we do to address leaders who are of a Trumpian strain, as it were?
First of all, we really have to think hard about why so many people voted for Trump. I mean, you've all seen the figures, you've all seen the numbers, and it turns out that more people voted for Trump than for any president in history ever. Now it just happens that that even more people voted for Joe Biden, but it means that and let me be very clear. I've always thought it was a mistake to look at the Trump phenomenon only through Donald Trump. I think it was a mistake by Europeans to focus on the persona. The persona is who he is, complicated, and let's not analyze the person. Let's look at the reasons why Trump was elected way back then, and why Trump got so many votes this time around. And that is something that everyone needs to think about. And if you want, this is not just a challenge for America, it's a challenge for European countries as well. The question is, why are so many people willing to support populists? Why are so many people prone to the easy and cheap and very simplistic messages that come out of the mouth of populist leaders? That's the bigger question. I'd also suggest that I personally believe, and this is going to be a very hard and tough debate. I happen to believe that Biden has a lot to thank moderate Republicans who voted for him. So it so happens that many of my Republican friends, very, very important and leading Republicans, voted for Joe Biden. And the question is, why is it that at the same time when you look at the down ballots, which to our European listeners means the votes cast for local and congressional candidates, why is it that the Democrats were not able to gain as much as we? It does not reflect the votes cast for Joe Biden, which also means that you need to think hard about how did the extreme right, extreme left's messages go down with the American public. And I must agree with former President Obama, who criticized the defund the police message, because it turns out that many African American communities think of the police as, yes, it's nasty what some police officers do, but all in all, the assistance of last resource is the police in many cases. And so they don't want to defund the police, they want a better police. And also, I have to say that I have always hated the talk about socialism. Look, I lived under socialism forever, for a long time. I can have a good conversation with any leftist about socialism. Don't call it socialism. It scared a lot of people. And so I just want to say that we will have to go through the process of analyzing, okay, what really happened. Back to Trump. It's not going away. The only way it can go away, if America embarks on a reconstruction of itself, if it embarks on an economic recovery that will help not just parts of society, but society as a whole. It will change only if America can stop the backsliding of the middle class, the shrinking of the middle class. And so I don't think political messages will do. So the huge responsibility of the Biden administration is, and that's why I'm talking about. That's why I'm saying Janet Yellen is such an important choice, because I think that is where the solution to populism and Trumpism lies.
Great. Well, we shall certainly see come January. And let's talk a little bit about that. In January, it's been a historical election. We're 1 month out from the election. How do you see the transition process? Will there be a smooth transition of power? You know, there's a lot of steam coming from the White House on that issue. And I would also add that, you know, unless the Democrats take back Georgia, those two seats in Georgia, we're looking at an era of divided government. How is this going to affect the Biden administration's first 2 years in office until the next midterms?
Good question. I think the transition is going to be fine. I think there are more people in the administration, and look. You have to give credit to Republicans who have spoken out, like the Secretary of State of Georgia, who is a Trump supporter, who is a Republican, a conservative Republican, and who has spoken out in favor of accepting the elections as it is. It was clean, it was safe. So I would say there are a lot of people out there. There are a lot of Republicans out there, and there are a lot of people in government now who want a smooth transition, who understand that the integrity of the elections, the integrity of the transition, is really, really important for the security and the future of the United States. So therefore, I would say the transition had a very shaky and very slow start, but it's happening. It's going on, and while Trump is, for all kinds of reasons, is trying to keep the heat on the election, still not conceding, still not accepting the elections results. But I think the transition is going on okay, and it will be fine. Now, here is something that is really, really important. I've heard so much criticism about people coming in with Biden and the choices. You know what? He is choosing experience over enthusiasm. And I think it is really important, because it means that he will have an extremely professional, profoundly experienced cabinet, which means, and here is leading to your other question, what happens if they don't win the elections in January in Georgia? They will still have to govern, and governing means that these professionals will have to make that happen no matter what. If they're not supported fully by the Senate, they will still have to govern. The responsibility for the president is there, and the president of the United States is a very powerful person, has a lot of incredibly important and powerful tools at his disposal. So you cannot blame in advance any failure on not having it. It will be better, it will be stronger, it will be easier if the Democrats have a Senate majority, but the responsibility will still be there. And I can trust me, Biden understands this. So that's really my response to your question. Let's see what happens.
Let's see, indeed. Thank you for that. That was actually the last question from me. Let's turn to the audience. We've gotten some questions in. Apologies for the vertigo, but I got to flip myself to get to the questions.
Yes.
Shall we? Let's start with, let's go in order. So the first question we have, how could the new presidential administration and its relationship with the EU impact Brexit and the UK government moving forward? Very important question, I would say.
Well, you know, there's a clear understanding that Brexit is the worst thing that's happened to Europe in its history. So this is tough, and I just want to say there's a clear message coming from the future White House, from the future president, that the free trade agreement that the Brits are talking about with the United States is not going to come about that easily. So that's really my response to it. I think, never made it a secret that Brexit was a mistake. It was a huge mistake, and I do believe that that it has weakened Britain's relationship with the United States as well.
That's a view I think our member party in the United Kingdom, the Liberal Democrats, would share, and they are still, of course, very appreciated members of our Liberal family. All right, let's see the next question here. So yeah, autocracy, the big autocratic powers. Is Biden's foreign policy agenda and team strong enough to take on issues such as pressure from China and Russia, given that even Obama and Clinton faced some problems in this area? Question I'm interested in, even
well,
here
this
from
is
Hungary.
well, this is yeah. Well, of course. I do believe there will be more. The position of the Biden administration will not be as blurred as it was during the Trump administration. We will have to deal with. We will, as a country, the United States will have to deal with China. And I do believe that this will be the really, really important and the biggest challenge for U.S. foreign policy, how to make sure that we cooperate with China where we have to cooperate, and China. Human rights, democracy issues is going to be on the top of the list. How much we can influence China, it remains a question, but we can influence China's influence outside of China pretty much. So I'd like to be very clear that pushing back on Chinese influence starts within our own ranks, and I think we will have to make sure that we put up safeguards against Chinese influence in our own countries. Let's face it, I was really disappointed at the European attitude to Huawei, because it's clear to me that Huawei is not a business and a technology proposition. It is clearly a political and geopolitical proposition. And with technological influence comes political influence. So let's not kid ourselves. Let me be blunt. I think Hungary is a country where the Chinese have I don't want to see Hungary become a province of China, and we're well on the way to becoming a Chinese province inside NATO, inside the European Union. So I think the United States will need to, and definitely I think there's an understanding that we'll need to push back on that. But I'd like to add that this is not just, I think America will ask Europe to do more about this. And I think you will agree that the European Union has not been very good at pushing back on autocracy within our own ranks. A last comment. I think the United States will be tougher on Russia. I think the United States will push back harder on Russia's efforts to disrupt and destroy our societies. But you don't forget that even under Trump, the Magnitsky Act worked. The sanctions on Russia were not lifted, and America pushed back on Nord Stream 2, which also is not an energy proposition, as opposed to what some people in particular in Germany are trying to suggest. It's not a business proposition, it's a political geostrategic proposition, and with oil and gas comes influence, and with that influence comes support for autocracy. So I'll stop here, but it's a big issue. One element where I think America will be tougher is corruption. because we in the United States see that at the core of the problems, we see corruption, political corruption and financial corruption.
Thank you. All right, and our next question is about liberal democracy, a topic we started with. Can the continental EU become the stalwart of liberal democracy after the increasing failure of Anglo-Saxon models?
We'll have to. It will have to. It's about survival. I mean, would anyone be able to explain to me what remains if we give up on our basic values and our way of life? So we will have to. I mean, if this all, so yeah, I think yes, and Europe needs to pull itself together and be firmer on that, and it needs to act in time. It has allowed the backsliding way too much.
I would have to agree with that assessment.
And Donnie, I have to say that this is the view from America. So in America, we have seen that the Europeans, great talk, a lot of criticism on Trump, a lot of messages about how America is giving up on our values, etc., etc. But frankly, seen from Washington, Europe has not really done well the last couple of years. It's time to be very honest, and I think Europeans need to have an honest conversation with themselves on, okay, where did we go wrong? Where did we allow some cheeky autocrats to go too far? And how do we stop this? And this is also an element of cooperation between the United States and Europe.
Well, sitting here in Budapest, I would have to agree with that assessment, but we are seeing some signs of new tendencies in that regard. We have a question here about defense. So will the Biden administration keep the pressure on Europe to develop their common defense and security policy after Trump leaves office? Also a subject we touched on earlier.
Yeah, yes. But the Biden administration will have no problems if Europe builds its own defense for the right reasons. If Europe builds it in order to, as some say, because it cannot any longer count on America, I don't agree with that. That's not the right reason why Europe has to spend more on defense. If Europe will build a more autonomous defense in order to take care of its backyard, in order to take care of some of the issues that it has to take care of. If Europe is building an autonomous and stronger defense in order to prevent another Yugoslavia to happen, then that's the right way to do it. But if it's in order to weaken the transatlantic alliance, that's the wrong way. So I would say that yes, the pressure will be on. You got to spend more, but you need to do it for the right reasons. That's really what we think here in the United States is the right way.
Indeed. Let's turn a little bit to a region that is equally important, but one that isn't often talked about, or we haven't mentioned it at least in this discussion, Latin America. What do you think Biden's foreign policy agenda will look like in regard to Latin America? And is this another geopolitical relationship that needs to be repaired following Trump's rhetoric?
Well, interestingly, Trump has totally neglected Latin America, and I think I have the sense that the Biden administration will pay a lot more attention to Latin America for all kinds of reasons. So I think it needs a lot of reparation, and I think Latin America needs a lot more support and sometimes tough love from the United States. It is a problem. It is an issue that for Trump in particular, not so much for the Trump administration, because I know a lot of people who deal with the Latin America issue, and they have the right thoughts about this. But Trump himself has narrowed it down to the migration issue, and which was totally wrong. Latin America is it's not an adversary. It is not an enemy. It is not a region, or Latin American countries are not challenging the integrity and security of the United States. So they will need more attention, and I can see that this is going to happen in a Biden administration.
Great, thanks for that. And we have time for about 2 more questions. So the next one from our audience is, has the Trump administration forced Europe and the EU to become more cohesive? Could there be some backtracking on this now that the threat, in quotes, of Trump is no longer here? Ironic, yes.
How ironic. In this, I sense some humor as well, because come on, you don't need Trump to keep to pull the European Union together. If you need a Trump to make Europe more cohesive and stronger, then we're lost. I think the global challenges are what should keep Europe together. And look, we'll see. I'm not, honestly, I have not been impressed. There are some elements of European cooperation where I have been very, very impressed in the last couple of years, but there are aspects where I have not really been impressed. And I have to say this, deepen European integration, deepen Europe, strengthen European institutions for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons.
All right, and let me see our next audience question. Yeah, also a topic we touched on briefly. What can the Biden administration do with Black Lives Matter and Antifa? Will the riots sparked by the perception of systemic racism, especially from police, disappear from a change of government? Also a loaded question.
Black Lives Matter is one of the most important historic developments in the United States socially. But there always is a danger that when something really, really important and something really, really critical happens, that somebody, some groups, some parts of society try to kidnap it for their own political purposes. And there always is the danger that people will kidnap Black Lives Matter for their own purposes. It doesn't mean that that Biden is very clear about needing to fix the problem of systemic racism in the United States. It's at the core of how he thinks about American society, not just because he owes a lot to the African American politicians. Honestly, without African Americans, Biden would not have become president. Don't forget the final choice of the Democrat candidates for president was decided by African Americans. So I would say that, I think he does it for the right reasons, because he has always been very, very close to the African American community. But having said that, yes, it has to. So Black Lives Matter is important. The issues they raise are important, and I think it is important that the issues they raise does not remain just in the framework of Black Lives Matter, but it becomes a mainstream issue. And that's where I think there was a second part of your question I might have missed.
I think you covered, about the
Antifa.
Yes. And systemic racism.
I oppose Antifa. Period. Antifa is not a positive actor. And I think it is important that I make this very, very clear.
All right. Yes. And actually, we still have a little bit more time, so I have one more question from our very own Natalie. This one's about the Supreme Court, also pretty important.
Yes.
Could the Supreme Court and recent Trump judicial appointees pose any problems for Biden and his ability to pass certain legislation, specifically relating to universal health care?
One of my, the members, as you know, with your background in the United States, maybe the among the branches of government, or is the Supreme Court stands out as the safeguard to American democracy. And I would suggest that at times the composition of the Supreme Court is not exactly to our liking, to our taste, but I still believe that the Supreme Court as an institution has its integrity. So I don't see that at all times the Supreme Court will vote with an inclination to support Republican political motives. It will vote as an independent body. And I say this because there has been a lot of talk about how the nominees will basically turn the Supreme Court into a political institution. I don't believe that. I have to confess to you that I became friends, and that's a big thing to say. I became friends with one of the most conservative justices ever, Justice Scalia. Justice Scalia, Nino Scalia, as you know, was an originalist whose interpretation of the Constitution is by the word, as written, and that's a very, very conservative view. It does not give much room to interpret the Constitution based on changes in society and changes in history, etc., etc. I say this. On the other hand, you had his best buddy on the court was Justice Ginsburg. Now, let me be brutally honest here, and people don't want to hear this. Justice Ginsburg made a very, very big mistake a couple of years ago when she did not resign and give room to have a young replacement, because the composition of the Constitution of the Supreme Court would be totally different. It would be more balanced. So I have to say that I'm not that worried. Let's see. I might be wrong, but I really think that members of Supreme Court, especially the president of the Supreme Court is really the Chief Justice is Roberts is in my view, they have great integrity, and they have shown already a couple of times that they don't go with the Republican flow. They go with what they believe is constitutionally right. So let's see what happens. I just want to, I know we're running out of time. What I want to say is that, first of all, I'm a liberal, although I'm not a member. I'm not a member and will never be a member of any party, given my historical experiences. I'm done with that. But I want to say that it is so important that you liberals help keep the debate and the conversation at the center. You are centrists. You are the ones who can help figure out how even this conversation between Europe and the United States stays in the middle. That you don't allow anyone to pull policies and politics in either direction. So that is why I really appreciate, first of all, what you guys are doing in the European Parliament, but also, Danny, I want to applaud you guys in Budapest for for hanging in and working for a better Hungary that will not be a laughing stock of the world as it has become, unfortunately and sadly in the last couple of days, but which will come back to be one of the great contributors to transatlantic security, a source of inspirations like we used to be and like we deserve to be as Hungarians. And then that is when you all can make a great contribution to the next phase of the transatlantic relationship and seize the opportunity that the Biden administration presents. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much, András. It's always a pleasure talking to you about foreign policy, about US, and it's really good to see you again as well. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for your thoughts, and I'd like to also take the opportunity to thank our viewers and wish everyone a happy, safe, and most importantly, healthy holiday season. And I'd like to turn it over here to my colleague Natalie to wrap things up. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, András. This was a very insightful conversation, obviously a really heavy topic with lots of different subtopics that we could have easily talked possibly for another hour about this, but I want to thank you both so much for taking the time to come and speak with us today. You know, as an American myself, obviously this is something that I have a vested interest in, but I think also people in the EU and all over the world are impacted by this transatlantic relationship, so it's really important that we have these types of conversations. So I just want to spotlight for everyone before we end here the wonderful work done by our graphic recorder, Orla O'Brien. So I am going to quickly spotlight this for everyone. So as our conversation has been going, she has been highlighting all of the key points. So we are going to be sending this around during our recap email for everyone to see, so you can have access to it. You can revisit this. We'll also be posting a recording of this event on the ALDE Party YouTube page. So like Daniel said, we just want to thank everyone for tuning in this afternoon, for submitting your questions. And most importantly, as we head into the holiday season, we hope that everyone has a healthy and safe and happy holiday. So once again, thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you so much to András and Daniel for joining us. Thank you again, Orla, for all of your wonderful work. And we hope to see you all very, very soon.